And today, wow, the story you've brought us is, well, it's deeply moving.
It's focused on an 8-year-old boy over in Belfast. He's been waiting an incredibly long time for a heart transplant. And the support he's received is just, well, it's reached some very high places.
We're talking about Dáithí from Ballymurphy. And the sources you've given us, they paint a picture of this ongoing, his family's amazing campaign work.
And this pretty remarkable moment of recognition.
Yeah, which involves, surprisingly, a handwritten letter.
From former U.S. President Bill Clinton, no less. So that's our mission for this deep dive. Understand Dáithí's story, its impact, beyond just his own health, and then really pull out the key calls to action that the sources are stressing.
It's such a powerful example, isn't it? How one family's sheer resilience can actually drive huge change.
Yeah.
But also how that change ultimately still comes down to individuals taking action.
Okay, let's get into it then. So the sources tell us Dáithí is 8 now, but he first went on the waiting list for a heart transplant back in 2018.
2018. So
That means he's now spent 7 years waiting. 7 years for a child needing a heart.
that length of time.
Yeah.
It just says so much about the sheer challenge families like Dáithí's are up against.
Yeah.
The sources talk about the journey, the immense strain, emotionally, physically, recent procedures just to keep him stable while he waits.
Right. But what really stands out is how his family reacted. They didn't just, sit back and wait. They channeled all that into this tireless campaigning.
They really did. Became this driving force, didn't they? Behind changing the organ donation law in Northern Ireland. And all their efforts led to the Organ and Tissue Donation Act. That's the Deemed Consent Act in 2022.
Which everyone now rightly calls Dáithí's law. So what did that law actually change fundamentally, according to the sources?
Well, it brought in what's often called the soft opt-out system.
Okay.
So the basic idea is that consent for organ donation is sort of assumed unless you've specifically registered your decision not to donate.
Got it. And the sources flagged that June 1st marks 2 years since Dáithí's law actually came into effect. That's a huge legislative win, directly because of their campaign.
It really is monumental. And Dáithí himself, his bravery through all this, it's been recognized too, big time.
How so?
Well, in 2023, he was given the Freedom of the City of Belfast.
Wow.
He became the youngest person ever to receive that honor.
That's amazing recognition, isn't it? For someone so young, facing what he's facing.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't just local recognition either. The sources mentioned support from people like Alan Shearer, Marcus Rashford, Vernon Kay too. His story obviously struck a chord.
Yeah, definitely captured public attention way beyond Northern Ireland. Shows how this very personal struggle resonated widely.
Which I suppose brings us to that really extraordinary connection we mentioned at the start, the letter from Bill Clinton. How on earth did that come about? What did the sources say?
Well, apparently Dáithí's dad, Merton, he actually wrote to President Clinton.
Just wrote to him.
Yeah. And the response, described in the articles, wasn't just some standard reply. It was a personal, handwritten letter.
Handwritten.
On stationery headed William Jefferson Clinton.
Wow. A former U.S. president actually sitting down and writing by hand. That is something else. What did it say? What was the message?
President Clinton specifically mentioned sharing the honor of the Freedom of Belfast with Dáithí. He said how proud he was to share it with someone as, quote, amazing as Dáithí.
That's lovely. And Clinton himself has a history with heart problems, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
And the sources quote him saying exactly that in the letter. As someone who's had heart surgery myself, I know how scary it can be.
Right.
And he went on to say how impressed he was by Dáithí's bravery throughout his young life.
Wow. Hearing that from someone who genuinely gets the fear involved with heart issues, that must have landed really powerfully with the family.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sources definitely suggest it meant a huge amount. And Clinton didn't just focus on Dáithí either. He gave a real nod to the family's wider work.
What did he say about that?
He said he was deeply inspired by the way you and your family have worked hard to make positive change across Northern Ireland.
And there was one line the sources really picked out, wasn't there?
Yes. Our world would be better if there were more people like you.
That's quite a statement. Really speaks to the impact their campaign has had.
It really does. Clinton also added some encouragement for Dáithí himself. Keep up the great work or keep going, something like that. And he mentioned hoping to meet them next time he's in Belfast. Even called himself a big fan pulling for you in New York.
It's genuinely touching, isn't it? That level of personal support reaching them, especially after 7 years navigating this whole thing.
Yeah.
Merton, Dáithí's dad, is quoted saying the message really touched them, particularly during a tough week. Just knowing people are thinking of them has always meant the world.
But, despite all this visibility, despite the huge success of Dáithí's law, Merton is also really clear in the sources. Their work isn't done. The need is still very much there.
That's a crucial point the sources bring out, isn't it? Even with the soft opt-out law, the whole system still depends on something very human.
Exactly. Merton puts it plainly. He says something like, the law was a huge step, but organ donation still needs people.
Right.
It needs you to join the register. It needs you to have the conversation with your loved ones. That's what makes the system work. It really highlights how the law creates the framework.
Mm-hmm.
But it's people actually signing up and talking about it that provides the organs, the fuel for it.
And he's honest, too, about the difficulty. He acknowledges that keeping momentum going 7 years in is hard. It fades. That feels like a really key insight from the sources.
It really does.
The challenge of keeping awareness high for something vital over such a long time, even after a big victory like getting the law passed.
So they're actually choosing to mark the 7-year point quite quietly, focusing on reflection.
Reflection on what exactly?
On the sheer weight of this, wait for Dáithí, obviously, on their son's incredible strength, but also on the huge impact of every single person who does register as a donor.
Mm-hmm. So their main message now, even with the law, even with the freedom of the city and letters from presidents, it's still fundamentally the same, isn't it?
It is powerfully consistent. They're urging people, not just in Northern Ireland, but right across the UK, please join the NHS Organ Donor Register.
And
crucially, have that conversation.
Right.
Talk to your family about what you want. Make sure they know your decision.
Because, as the sources remind us at the end,
Yeah, there are many people, children included, waiting in hope, and one of them is Dáithí.
So, wrapping up this deep dive into Dáithí's story, what have we really learned?
Quite a few things.
We've seen the incredible resilience needed when you're facing these long, long medical waits. We've seen how one family's fight can genuinely lead to major legal change, like Dáithí's law.
Yeah, the power of support, too, both from the public and, these really high-profile figures.
But maybe the most important thing, the thing that keeps coming through, is that enduring need for just individual human action.
Signing up, talking, that's what actually makes the system save lives.
So here's something to maybe chew on as you reflect on Dáithí's 7 years waiting and his family still pushing forward.
The sources really highlighted two things, didn't they? That incredible resilience needed for the long haul.
Right.
But also the family's own admission that keeping public momentum going is really hard over time.
Yeah, that it fades.
So, what does that tension tell us about how we as a society sustain support and collective action for causes like organ donation, causes that need ongoing commitment year after year?
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.